Hi, I'm Nadia Fischer, CEO and co-founder of Witty Works, and I quickly explain you in this video what unconscious bias is. For this, I want to do this riddle with you. What is the difference here between field A and field B? Well, looking at it, you will see that field A is actually a dark gray and field B is a light gray, right? Okay, watch out. With the next trick, I will take away your reflex. And check this out. The two fields actually have the exact same color. Now, here I am not tricking you. This is truly the case. What happens here in our brain? Well, over time, and especially when we were small, we've learned how a checkerboard looks. That there are always these gray and light gray fields, and it always looks the same. And this know how has been saved in our brains in a way that every time we see now a checkerboard, even something looks only like a checkerboard, our brain immediately interprets, this field has to be dark and this field has to be light. Especially also in our case of this riddle, you see that cylinder, the green one, and that throws a shadow onto the checkerboard. But because our brain knows how a checkerboard looks, it will make up that A has to be dark and B has to be light. Now, now you know it. And let me go back. Do you still see that these two have the same color? Well, I sure don't. I still see that A is darker and B is lighter, even though I know now that they actually have the same color. And this is what we call unconscious bias. Our brain is biased because we have learned a certain pattern during our lives that has been saved at an unconscious level of our brain. And even though we know now the truth, we cannot overrun that with our let's say the unconscious part of it. And even if we know now the truth, our conscious brain cannot give us the true reality. Our unconscious part of the brain still just produces this pattern that it has and gives us a wrong reality. That's what's called unconscious bias. There are about 200 different biases that have been discovered by behavioral economics and that influence our decisions every day. Unconscious bias is a cognitive distortion to understand and interpret the world. It is really important because without biases, we could not work all this data that's all around us the whole day. It's essential for survival. If, for example, we're standing at the street and we hear a loud voice, it is a bias that makes us not trip into the street, and get run over by the car. But also it cannot be untrained. It has to be there because it's, so important for survival. So it cannot be untrained. And as said, it works on the unconscious level. That also means that sometimes we have a belief about ourselves at the conscious level that contradicts what actually we decide in certain situations because these patterns just take over, just like before with the checkerboard. Well, I have not invented all this myself, right? It all has been found out by behavioral economics, and one of the founder of that field is Daniel Kahneman. He has actually won the Nobel Prize for his findings. And in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow, very recommendable, he explains it that we have two systems in our brains. System one that takes decisions based on reflexes, so on these biases, and system two that takes decisions really in a rational way. He has found out that in 90% of our decisions, we actually use system one, and only in 10% of our decisions do we really use system two. That means that we are only very partial rational in our decisions. And a lot is driven by these reflexes, by these unconscious biases. That's maybe a little bit scary, thinking of ourselves that we would be rational, but actually not so much. Well, you could also say, do you have a brain? Well, then you are biased. So take this with you. And I hope you kind of realized in the next few days when you're walking around that sometimes you're actually deciding something totally unconsciously based on your unconscious biases. Thank you for listening.